Hello, folks, and happy Friday. Today, I'm going to get off a little bit off topic. I'm going to stave off a little bit off of the digital marketing topic and talk to you about something that's a powerful marketing tool. And that's all about writing a book. Writing a book about you, about your business, about whatever that is a very important thing. And as one of the key elements to my success is when I wrote a book for my business. And today I am going to introduce you to the person who I had the privilege of having edit my book. And she's going to talk to you about the power of writing a book. So without further ado, episode 39 starts right now.
Hello, and welcome to Marketing Solutions for Local Businesses, the podcast where you will discover all the latest and greatest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you are not getting the results you are looking for from your digital marketing efforts, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's the host of our show, the local business guy himself, Frank Deming.
Hello, everyone. This is Frank Deming, the local business guy, and welcome to today's episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Businesses. Now, before I introduce you to today's guest and get us on with today's content, I would like to do a couple of housekeeping items. And I want, number one, I want to let you know that if you are thinking about any technical things that we've talked about on the show, any past episodes that you're probably confused about and you want to try to implement it on your own business, this is the perfect time to give us a call at 888-416-7752 or send us an email at info@lbmsllc.com, and one of our marketing specialists will help you out with whatever question you may have and tie it back to your specific industry. Also, if you want to be a guest on our show, if you got a message that you want our audience to listen to, you just want to follow that same process. 888-416-7752 or send us an email at info@lbmsllc.com. Okay, I got one last thing before I introduce you to our great guest. And that is this. If you want to start your own podcast, if you've been thinking about it, it's a great way of getting my message out there. I want you guys to give Buzzsprout a shout. Buzzsprout is absolutely the best way and easiest way to start and launch your own podcast. Why? Easy. They give you a really, really cool tool that you can distribute your information to all the major podcast directories. I'm talking about Apple Podcasts. I'm talking about Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, just to name a few, and Spotify, basically. So not only that it's easy to use, they are actually masters at it. Why? Because they've helped over 100,000 people over the years launch their own podcasts. So if you've been thinking about it, you're on the fence, I ask you to give them a shout. And there's a link to their website in the show notes. I want you to go to that link, click on it, and when you do, you're actually going to receive a $20 gift card from Amazon. That actually gives them an indication that we sent you. And then, that's a way for them to say thank you for checking us out and also let them know that we sent you. All right. So Buzzsprout, the absolute best way to start a podcast. All right. Now that we've gotten all of the housekeeping out of the way, I want to introduce you to my guest this morning. And she's a tremendous human being, but outside of being that, she's a tremendous writer. And like I said in the intro, we're getting off of our normal digital topic, and I want to talk to you guys about the power of writing your own book. And there's no other person that's better than expressing that than my great guest, Debbie Kevin. Welcome to the show, Debbie.
Oh, Frank, I'm so excited to be here with you today. Thank you for having me.
All right, right. I'm very excited as well because, you know, again, this is not my typical topic of conversation in on the show. We talk about digital stuff, but you know, you gotta change it up a little bit, and you got to have something that will interest my listeners in whatever other tactic they can use to grow their business and to expose to get more exposure and actually to expose their business to other people outside of their local area as well, because you never know, you may want to franchise your business. So and what better way of doing that than writing a book, right?
Exactly. And I will say that we can definitely tie it into digital marketing because there's a lot of people, especially right now, doing a lot of things digitally with their books. So
Yeah.
there's some new tools on the market that actually did go bigger in the digital space.
Right, right. Now, I like I said earlier to my listeners here, you are the person that actually helped edit my book, which I had no idea what to do. So I want to thank you for that. Number one. Number
My
two,
pleasure.
it did wonders for my business because it probably I think the reason is because of credibility, in my opinion. But I'll let you touch on that. But before we even get into these quote unquote interview, I like to say, it's not like I'm interviewing Debbie Kevin. It's kind of like I'm sitting back, having a cup of coffee, and talking with you because you're so easy to talk to. But I know you very well. But I would love for you, in your own words, although I did a pre-intro, tell us, who is Debbie Kevin?
How long do you have? No.
We got about 2 hours.
Perfect. No, we snooze fest. Yeah. So who am I? I'm first of all a mom, right? So that's something that you and I have in common, that we're parents. I'm a business
Yes.
owner, but I didn't get to my business via a straight path, which many of your listeners probably can relate to. I like to say that I am a reformed CPA and a corporate refugee. And by that, I mean, I spent many years, a beginning part of my career, in the accounting world and Six Sigma world, process management, the very left brain side. But what was interesting about that very formative time in my life was I was always the person that people came to when there was an email to write or a newsletter to create. And I became like kind of always the office person to say, hey, can you make this sound better? And so I was an editor very early on and a writer in my spare time, right? I love to write. I always met, like many people, I had the dream of someday I'm going to write a book. And then 2010 happened. My youngest son was diagnosed with autism. And during that journey, I made the decision to step away from my corporate career. I was a C-level executive, working 70 hours a week, managing kids on my own. And it was a really big deal. I felt very untethered. But during that time, I had the opportunity to start writing. I was filling my days when I wasn't working with my youngest son because we created a whole infrastructure around him feeling like he was enough and just to help him grow.
Right.
But at the same time, I grew myself. And that period of time was very transformational. In 2012, I was actually invited into Stanford University's creative writing program. And
Oh, wow.
I was stunned, actually. And when I read what I submitted to even be considered, it is drivel. Someday, we'll have to share that somewhere because it's hilarious to realize how far I've come. So that was a 2-year program. During that time, I learned everything there was about writing a novel. And at the end of that, so I have written 2 novels and plan on publishing them in the next couple of years. I'm still revising.
Right.
I decided to start a hobby of helping people create their websites. I'd taken a couple of classes and had some fun. I had some experience. But what I took away was I either needed to strengthen those tech skills, or I could focus on what I really loved, which was the words.
Right.
And so I took a lot of classes and wrote a lot of copy for websites, marketing copy, digital copy.
Right.
And again, I came to a crosswords. What do I really love? I really love the words. And then people started coming to me. You and I were part of an organization where everyone was challenged in 2016 to write a lead magnet book, an expert level book. And many people used the place that was recommended by this organization. And honestly, Frank, what was coming back were people were like, I got a book. And they were terrible. They were heartbreakingly terrible.
Right.
But people came to me and said, can you help me? This is not what I expected. And so those were the first books that I edited. And
that's how I came to you, I think, Debbie. I think I didn't try that service.
No, you didn't.
But someone mentioned you. I mean, I knew you obviously, but we've never worked. And then and I gave you a call and we edited our first book. But go ahead. I'm sorry for breaking your flow.
I'm so glad because so it was interesting because it was really basic cleaning up that. And so I kind of got on my soapbox. I say I have a jihad against this particular organization because they don't serve entrepreneurs well. It's basically we'll make your book in a very short period of time and give you a cover, but it's not something of which people can feel proud. And so when you came to me, you came with all of these disparate pieces of content that you'd written over the years. And you're like, I think this makes a book. And you were right. It made a really good book. And I wish I should have looked up what you named the title before we got to it. And after going through it the first time, I'm like, Frank, I think that you have like steps here that really tell people how to recession proof their business.
Right.
And we went back and forth and created your book. But that's really how I got started. And so I really help people, and especially entrepreneurs, in three main ways. One is to create what I call the expert level book. It's the book that really helps them get clarity about their value proposition in the world. It helps them claim their expertise and then leverage that book in other ways, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, as we go on. The second is a thought leader book, which is kind of that next iteration. Yeah, they're seen as an expert, but they have developed thoughts about how to play bigger. And so that book is more substantive, right? So the expert level book might be up to about 100 pages-ish. The thought leader book is more substantive, so maybe 200 to 300 pages. So there's more meat to that kind of book.
Is there a sweet spot in terms of how many pages somebody should do if you're using a book as a lead magnet? Just out of curiosity.
Well, and so there's the lead magnet, which I call more of a booklet, which I say should be between 40 to 50 pages, and that can be made into an expert level book. So an expert level book is kind of that next level. So I say a lead magnet is something a little lighter, typically, doesn't always have to be, but you want it to be between, I would say, 40 and 100 pages. And there are many statistics out there that say, people will read a 100-page book cover to cover. Whereas they're making a more significant time investment for the thought leader book.
Correct.
And so if you want people to know who you are, establish your expertise, and take action, so between 40 and 100 pages is typically that expert level lead magnet book that's out there. I think yours is somewhere closer to 80 or 90 pages, if I recall.
Something like that, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a little on the meatier side. And then the third kind of book that I help people with is writing a memoir. A lot of people are like, how I came to be an entrepreneur, how I came to lead people in my area of expertise is a very interesting story. And people don't really claim that journey, but there's such a beauty in pausing and saying, here's how I got where I am.
Yeah.
from a place of healing, but also a place of inspiration. So there's some guidance in that. So those are the three main ways right now that I work with entrepreneurs in getting their stories and their business out into the world.
Okay. Wow. That's outstanding. I mean, there are a couple of things in there that I didn't even know about you. I did, like, for instance, the CPA thing. I don't think you probably told me, but maybe I wasn't paying attention. But I didn't know your background was in that realm of business.
Indeed it was. I worked for KPMG and Deloitte and Touche before going
Okay.
into corporate.
Okay.
So
I
yeah.
do remember now. I remember the KPNG. That I remember. Okay.
Yeah.
It was probably because I had some beers. But anyway.
I usually wait until somebody's had a few beers to drop that nugget.
All right. That's interesting. So, all right. So, Debbie, first of all, before we get into some questions that I have for you, how have you been coping with this COVID-19? I know we're we're still in the middle of it, but we're not like how it was back in March and April, obviously. But I'm sure you're keeping healthy and everything. But how's this whole thing? I'm hoping it didn't affect you a lot, and if it did, what you've been doing to quote unquote pivot.
Yeah, so that's a really great question because it's so important. I am one of the very fortunate people in that very early on, I took a look at the opportunities for people, because one thing that I hear over and over and over again from entrepreneurs is the one thing that they don't have to write their books is time. And so what I decided to do initially, it was just going to be once a month, and very quickly I pivoted and I created an opportunity for entrepreneurs, or really anybody. It can be people who are writing fiction, nonfiction, newsletters, anything. I created a free space for everybody to come to join me and write for free. Just come and write for 2 hours every week. And it's been really amazing what has happened from that is all kinds of people who've said, I want to write a book someday, are showing up and they're writing a book. I'm not teaching. I'm not coaching. I'm just creating a space that moves around and people come. I have between, on an average, 15 to 20 people showing up every week to write something, and people are writing their books. And so that's one way that I pivoted. It was just creating space. And honestly, Frank, for me, it was selfish because I have these 2 novels that I talked about. And I'm like, I want to create space in my own day, own week to focus on my own writing. So there was that. And I found that people are having that space and that time. And so they're coming and saying, okay, I now have what I didn't expect to have. How can I leverage this to finally get these things done?
Right.
And so I've been fairly busy in a great way, but it also allowed me to step back and decide, okay, it's time for me to pivot. I'm going from, me doing just writing and then helping people self-publish, but I've launched, or will have launched by the time this episode airs, my own publishing house. And so
that's outstanding. And what's the URL for that? I'll drop a link on the show notes for sure. But what is the URL for that?
So it's called HighlanderPressBooks.com.
Yeah.
And what I realized was I really was being called to step into a bigger playing field, because I do, through helping people like you self-publish their books, I've learned a lot. And there are people who will always self-publish, and I'm going to take care of them as well. But this is for people who don't want to self-publish. Their book maybe isn't for Random House or Penguin or Simon and Schuster. It's for this other area of independent publishing. And so I've committed myself fully to that. I've actually started a graduate program on publishing. I'm part of the Independent Book Publishers Association. I take regular classes, and I learn so that people who want to publish and work with a publisher don't necessarily have to. There's a sweet spot in between. So that's how I've pivoted.
It's funny. Now that I'm hearing all of this, Debbie, the one thing I forgot to say, and I apologize for this, when I introduced you, is to say the epitome of an action taker. That is Debbie Kevin, because everything you've said is amazing to me, because it's such a difference between when we first started our professional relationship to now. And I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you being in my circle of friends, my inner circle, if you will. So kudos to you. High five, virtual high five. So just want to let you
Well,
know that.
we'll say it's a virtual hug, because if we're going to do a virtual, dude, let's do the real thing. So
There you
thank you
go,
very
virtual
much for
hug.
that. I appreciate that, Frank. It's true. And it's funny because I met with a mentor about 3 years ago, and she said, Debbie, you are here to make a global difference in the world. And at the time I was like, what?
What are you
What are
talking
you
about?
talking about?
Yeah.
And it felt very overwhelming. And she thought it was in terms of my autism experience. And I can't say that that's not going to be part of it, but
Right.
it didn't feel right. But I hadn't grown myself enough to say, what I really love is books. Here's what I really want to spend my time on. Here's why I'm so passionate about it.
Right.
And so it took those 3 years of me growing myself to
Yeah.
say, yeah, this I'm ready. I'm ready to lead this evolution for all business owners, because the gig economy, entrepreneurs, all the mompreneurs, the parentpreneurs, the solopreneurs, the
Yeah.
small business owners, we're making up more and more of the world's economy. And
That's
it's
right.
time to claim our expertise. It's time to say, here's my stake in the ground. And I know that writing a book actually helps people get even clearer about what they're here to do.
That's right.
And it's amazing transformation that I get to witness.
I totally get that. Part of the reasons why I started this podcast is because I think there was a lot of misled information there's a lot of information being misleading to my audience, particularly the small business owner. So I get what you're saying with the whole book thing. I mean, it's a passion that you have because there's something that you want to share with someone.
Exactly.
Which actually leads me to, um, believe it or not, my first official question. Because when Debbie Kevin and Frank never get together, we get to yakking. But it's always really good information, so it's not wasted time. But I did want to ask you, why should an entrepreneur like you and I write a book in the first place? Why, what's something that, say, let's say a HVAC owner.
Right.
Why would he or she write a book?
That's such a good question. So here's the thing. I'm not sure that there are any other HVAC business owners who've written books. I'm just going to throw that out there. So right away, by taking that stand,
Right.
you're claiming your expertise and putting that space into the world. So that's actually really unique. So what I would say is, what interests me is, why HVAC? Why are you passionate about HVAC? And then why should I care? Because I bet you that that person's story is actually interwoven in some fashion. Maybe it's a family business. Like, why did it start? How did it begin? And how did it evolve? HVAC in the 70s is very different than HVAC today.
Correct.
What's the passion that keeps that person going? But then more importantly, how does it impact their readers? So I know for a fact that tradespeople, are struggling to get journey people onto their team. Most people, there's been such a focus on going to college that the trades have really suffered. So writing a book could be the thing that attracts the right person to the
Right.
field, number one. I know that that's been a huge problem in the construction industry and plumbing and
Yep.
electrical workers. So why do it? That's number one. That could be the focus of the book. It could be geared toward people who might have that aptitude or interest. The second could be to the customers. Like, here's how I got here, and here's what makes me different.
Yeah.
And here's, some tips that you could learn to make your HVAC last longer. And it's not just about changing the filter, but how to make a decision about what HVAC comes in. I live in a building that was built in 1912. We do not have ducts. We have window air conditioners, which are not good for the environment.
Mm-hmm.
But how does that HVAC person know how to install some sort of system that retains the integrity of our homes?
Right.
Those kinds of things. So
yeah,
I can think of a lot of ways an HVAC person could write a book.
It's funny. The reason I brought that up because it's a HVAC. It's a very odd business. I mean, I work with a lot of them. They're a lot of my customers. But I just love to give some of them some ideas as to why. But another reason is because one of my clients, who's actually an attorney. I'm not going to mention his name because I don't have the right to yet. But he's actually down where I used to live, down in the Washington, D.C. area. And he had a firm. His practice was mostly criminal, like petty stuff, like criminal, someone who knocked over a gas station or something like that.
Right.
A defense attorney of that. He did that for like 10 years, realized he didn't love it. But because of his own actions, being divorced 3 times, he decided to go into family law.
Interesting.
And wrote a book. That book, someone coached him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he ran into you. Maybe you know him, Debbie.
I have not worked with. I am working with an attorney, but not your friend.
Okay. Someone coached him properly and told him to write his story about his divorces and stuff like that, and that's how he knows so much. And now he's a highly coveted divorce attorney in the DC area. It's that's the power of a book, and I think the book really helped them tremendously. I don't know if he used it as a lead magnet. I think people were just finding him in Barnes and Noble and stuff like that. But
sure.
But that's something that I wanted to share with you because I know that a brick and mortar company like an attorney or whatever can actually leverage that. But see how you just off the cuff came up with an idea for a HVAC person. That's that's amazing because I know I couldn't do that. Again, that's not what I do.
I love riffing.
So you mentioned you said you had a Facebook group, right? Was it a Facebook group that you had the whole write your own book? Form?
No. So I have I do have a Facebook group. It's in the process of morphing, but
okay.
So I have you talking about my write-ins.
Yeah, the write-ins thing. Was it a group or?
So it just happens on Facebook, and so I just
okay.
People who are on my list get notified. People who follow me on Facebook get notified. Sometimes I even put it up on Instagram, but. Yeah, so it's just, and we do it on Zoom, and so it's super informal. All they need to do is have the link, which all they do is ask, and I give it to them.
Okay.
And we gather. In fact, there's one every week, and it moves around between Monday and Thursday in the days and times because I have people from all over the globe who attend. So people on the left coast can't come to the early ones, but that's great for my European. Or Middle Eastern peeps, and so I'm moving around to accommodate. Yeah.
You're global, so that's good. Well, the reason I'm asking that is because I was just curious. Especially, this is a perfect question because you are global, and you've worked with different types of industries. How long does it normally take, on average, to go from an idea to say a published book?
Well, and that's such a hard question to answer, but I'll go with the expert level books. So the smaller books, say you have an idea. If you work from a really great outline and you're
Mm-hmm.
diligent about following a writing plan, which, I also help people get very clear. They go off and they write, or we look at their blogs they've already written. Can we repurpose any of these and knit them together?
Right.
I say it takes about 9 months. So it's from 9 months to a year. And so let's pause for a minute and talk about why 9
Wow.
months.
Mm-hmm. It's a long time.
It's a long time, but so most people think I write a book, I slap a cover on it, and I toss it up on Amazon. And then, wait, nobody's buying it? Nobody knows about it? And so there's really what I call 5 distinct stages of writing, publishing, launching, and promoting a book. So there's the writing phase, right? So if you're really diligent and you could write, I wrote my book, which is coming out in September 15th. I wrote my book in my write-ins. So 2 hours a week, I wrote it in, but I had a really strong outline and I knew what I was writing. That's a big deal. I wrote it in about 12 hours.
Gotcha.
Now, I'm a professional writer, I will say, but that's one stage, writing. So you could take 2 months to write your book. Let's just put that out there. Then there's the editing process. And all editing is not created equal. So you have a developmental editor, which most people equate to fiction, but I think that the best nonfiction books, the best lead magnet books, expert level books, include stories. So you can preach at people, but if you can show via a story how someone is just like them, you want to do that. So the developmental editor looks at the entire manuscript and says, we want to move this around. Like, let's talk about your book, Frank. You had a lot of different pieces that we put together. And when I looked at the whole thing, I'm like, you actually have 7 things that you can talk about that solves this problem for your ideal reader.
Right.
So we move things around and we put them in an order and a flow that actually built to a conclusion. A very strong conclusion is you need a Frank Deming in your life. Right. And that's how we want to look at this. The developmental editor helps shape the book. Then there's a copy editor, which says, okay, this sentence doesn't work. You have too many propping up words like very or own or personally or other words that really, or you're passive. You use was and is or to be or to have.
Right.
So you strengthen the sentence level and you correct the punctuation, you correct the grammar, all of that copy editing.
Wow.
So that's
Details.
a whole nother kind of editing, right? And
that's
then, and then you go to layout. So layout is where you take the book and it's laid out in a publishable form. I use a program called InDesign, which is an Adobe product, and it's what makes books look so professional, like amazing level. It's just like you go to Barnes & Noble and pull a book off the shelf. That's how your book will look when it's done in InDesign. After it's laid out, then there's the proofing phase. That's where you go back and you make sure there are no typos. There's no for, F-O-R, where there should be an F-O-U-R, things that may have been missed. Literally, proofreaders read the book out loud because when you read it out loud, you catch things that your eyes would normally naturally skim over. So the proofing then gets updated.
Now, is there an automated way of doing proofing, or is this an actual human being, aka Debbie Kevin, doing the reading?
It's an actual person doing the reading because a program doesn't pick up the things I just talked about.
Really?
For is spelled correct. Well, for is used correctly. It might, you can use tools, but proofing is actually done the old-fashioned way. Printed out, read out loud. Yeah. And Debbie Kevin doesn't do the proofing. Debbie Kevin has somebody who loves to do proofing.
Yeah. No, but it's a person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I said Debbie Kevin, I meant
Yeah.
aka Debbie Kevin
In the,
services.
in the old way, when I was in the beginning, I was doing
Right.
But again, you get to a point where like, what's my unique brilliance? That's not it. So the proofing gets done. Meanwhile, while all that's happening, the cover is being designed. The cover's being designed, and then it's laid out, and there's all kinds of science behind the cover. What colors do you use? What fonts do you use? What do you want the people to feel like? What's the copy on the cover? Do we want to give it to advanced readers to get blurbs, to get some testimonials in your book? All of those things happen while we're doing this. So that's the actual book. Then it gets uploaded to the printing and distribution services. Most people are familiar with, especially if you self-published, Amazon. People think Amazon automatically. But Amazon means that your book is only available on Amazon. You mentioned your divorce attorney person, and his is available other places.
Well, yeah, when his story was when he did all of this was way before Amazon became Amazon.
Right.
So it was in Barnes and Nobles. It was in what's that other thing that went under?
Well, there's Borders. There's all kinds. Yeah.
You mentioned all of the books.
Right. So I actually use, with my clients, I use a service called Ingram Spark and another one called Draft to Digital. So I use 3 platforms for every book and get them in Barnes and Noble, get them into Waterstones in England, and get them into online, all these other different places.
Right.
Because different countries use different platforms. So we can get it on every platform, and we can get it into an audiobook format even now. So that's so we've talked about writing, we've talked about editing, now we're talking about publishing.
Right.
Again, but it's not like the Field of Dreams. If you write it, they will come. Like, you actually have to tell people about it. So then there's the book launch, right? And that's where you come in, especially, right, with your digital marketing expertise, is getting your eyeballs on your book, letting people know that it's out there. And so there's a launch day, and then there's a launch period. But you don't want your book to stop there, so you need to do promo. And so we work with a fabulous PR person who you know, Jennifer McGinley.
Yes.
She's my PR person. So she helps people get in the media. She helps them get their books in front of other places, to get interviews and get in print magazines, and just keep the book in front of people's eyeballs.
Yeah.
So there are 5 distinct stages, and writing, as you noticed, is just the very beginning. So that's why it takes 9 months, a minimum of 9 months.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's funny. I've been through the process, but I didn't realize all the intricacies of the process.
It's like I'm Oz, like behind the curtain, right? All the magic. Yeah.
You're definitely like the Wizard of Oz there. Yeah. I just see it happening, and that's it. Because we're so busy, Debbie. I mean, it's life is such a busy thing. And it's becoming busier and busier. Although we got slowed down, we got slapped with the whole pandemic thing, but it just seems like everybody's just going back to normal again. It's funny. I drive around on the Parkway here in Jersey, and it's like it's back. What's going on? No one really cares, or what's going on in the world?
It's incredible, right? I completely agree with you. It's mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling.
Have we learned nothing?
It looks like we haven't, but I digress. So let's see. So another question I have for you is, so that's a pretty interesting and intricate process that people have to take note of, and that's why they would need someone like a Debbie Kevin to do it. But if they want to do it themselves, let's assume that you didn't just scare the pants out of them. Because I know if I had heard that in the beginning, I mean, I wasn't even thinking about doing it myself in the first place. So I just say, hey, Debbie knows how to do it. Okay, boom, let's have her do it. But let's just assume I was crazy and I had heard this, I would have been scared. But there's some people who weren't. What's the one mistake that most entrepreneurs will make when they say start writing their books? Like, what is that? Is something, if there's a nugget you can give them, if they're thinking about doing it after listening to this interview, what's the thing that they want to avoid?
So if we're talking about writing, the one thing that I would say most entrepreneurs don't think about is, who am I writing this for and what's my ultimate goal? So I love using a thing from movies called the log line. And so the log line is this. Here's how it works. This is my super secret technique. The first is, who is this book for? Like,
right.
Literally write it down. Who is it for?
Mm-hmm.
The second is, what is you as the writer? What is your goal with this book? And I'm not talking about selling a million copies. Like, what's your transformation proposition for your clients?
Mm-hmm.
And then the third piece of this is, what problems do your clients have and that this book is going to solve? What that does is it gets really clear about keeping you in the lane while you're writing. So that's one really big mistake that people write, is they just write and they're like, I'm just going to put this out there, and they make it all about themselves. And you know, from marketing, it's never about you. It's always about the
who you're writing, who you're writing for, yes,
who you're promoting and who you're doing. So you're solving a problem for them. So that's number one. The second thing is, as they're writing, they're editing. And the two things are very different. And I know I'm adding a second layer in there, but this one's really important as well. Once you know what you're writing, especially those of us who in the past have been control enthusiasts, as it were, we want our writing we're trying to cut steps out, because you just heard that there takes some editing, right? So we're trying to cut that out. So we write and we edit at the same time. And what that does is it turns off the creative side of your brain, because your creative side is the right side. Like, you're going to be creative. It's going to be, you let it flow. You let things just come out. I call writing that first draft like kind of information bulimia. Let's just get it all out. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to make sense. Just get it out on the page. But what happens when you edit as you write is you actually switch to the logical and left side of your brain, which cuts off creativity. And you may be saying, but why does an HVAC person need to be creative? Why does a lawyer need to be creative while they're writing? Writing is inherently a creative process.
Right.
And you're stymieing your creativity. And every person is creative in his or her own way, creative. So we want to stay in that creative space. Let the creativity romp all over the page. You cannot edit a blank page, but man, can you edit and make beautiful dribble. And I have seen lots and lots of dribble, and they turn out to be beautiful books. And so that those would be the two things that I would say people need, mistakes that people make when they're writing.
That's funny, because you just described my whole blog writing process. I'm writing it, and as I'm writing, I'm writing and fixing. So I gotta make a note of I gotta put it somewhere here in this office. A note not to do that. Just have a brain dump. But yeah, I'm guilty of that. And as a matter of fact, all the drafts that I gave you were like that.
I'm sure. But but here's the thing. Here's the big takeaway. Was your book like that?
No.
Exactly.
But all the drafts, when I gave you my drafts, I was writing and editing at the same time. So that was a big mistake. But anywho.
Live and learn, Frankie D. Never learn. New dog.
So
old dog, new tricks.
Old dog, new tricks. Well, I hope you guys understood what she just said there, because that's if you're thinking about writing a book, please make a note of that, because that's huge. So So you also mentioned, using Jennifer McGinley and using PR, but let's say we're self-publishing, we're doing everything ourselves. Like how can an author increase the visibility of a book if they don't have a Debbie Kevin in their corner?
Right. Oh, so I'm so glad. So I want to mention one thing before I answer that question.
Sure.
You mentioned if everybody listens to this interview and they're feeling scared about publishing a book or writing a book, like it's overwhelming. I equate, and it's also 9 months, right? So we have a book that takes 9 months. If you knew about parenting now, back before you had your daughter, would you have ever become a parent?
No.
So there's ignorance, there's bliss in this case, in birth and in birthing books.
Yeah.
Bliss, ignorance is bliss. And so we can do hard things. And those hard things can be the best things that we've ever done. Because I think you and I would agree, parenting, as the hard as it has been and continues to be, the biggest blessing in our lives. And our books can be just the same. So don't let that scare you off. Yeah. So, okay, we're going back to our regularly scheduled program, which your question was, I can't make the investment right now to work with a publisher. That's really ultimately the question, right? Yeah. So how can I publish the best book?
Not a publisher, the publisher, which is
the publisher. Yes. Okay.
Debbie,
I'll take
Debbie
that.
Kevin.
Thank you. Yeah. Highlander Press, baby.
That's right. There you go.
Yeah. So so I actually wrote a book that's coming out on September 15th. I mentioned it's called, You've Written Your Book. Now What? And it's a self-publishing guide for entrepreneurs.
And it happens to be the title of this podcast episode, exactly. By the way.
I wonder how we did that. So I wrote this book for the person who does really want to self-publish and doesn't want to make the investment in working with, a professional publishing house or, and I won't say an editor, because I do think that regardless of if you self-publish or you work with someone, whether it's a big publishing house or you work with an independent publisher, two places that you really do want to hire a professional and make the investment. And one is in editing. You want your book to be the best representation of you. And I'm not talking about having your mom or your sister or your cousin or your best friend edit your book, because they're not professional editors. It is completely worth the investment. You can go to the Editorial Freelance Association, and there are editors there who are professional, and you can put in a job and have people bid on your job. So that's a great resource for people who want to self-publish.
Oh, awesome.
The second is getting your cover right. Do not sell your book short and do a Canva cover. Really hire a graphic designer who knows the power of color and fonts and layout, because there's nothing worse than seeing 73 fonts on the cover of a book and knowing this person did it themselves. It doesn't represent you in the way that you want it to. So those are two areas of how to self-publish. And so I step people through all of the 5 steps in my book. Here's how you write. You've written your book. Now what? So you're going to go through your editing process. You're going to go through deciding how you want to publish. Do you want to self-publish? Do you want to work with an indie publisher? And I lay out why you would want to do either, all the way through even getting an agent. Like, why would you want to do that?
Right.
Which one serves you best? We talk about royalties, we talk about expenses, we talk about making an investment in different areas. I talk about, now you've written it, here's how you want to do your launch. And so I give away truly my secret of launch day is getting launch partners, making sure you have graphics that are out there. Start teasing your book about 6 weeks before. Letting people know the process. Hey, I'm writing my book. I'm doing this. Get people excited about doing it.
And now with social media, so easy to do that.
It is. And people, here's the thing is people want to hear your story. They want to know your expertise. They want to celebrate because they love you. And so, even the HVAC guys, he's got a list, whether he knows it or not. If he's working with Frank Deming, he's got a list. He's got all kinds of ring fencing. He knows all of this stuff. So you can leverage what you do, Frank, to
Yes.
get that out there as well. And so get that into platforms, get it into feeds, and get it onto other areas. You can leverage your expertise into other arenas like podcasts or speaking opportunities in front of your local chamber, into networking groups, all of those things. And then if you decide that you want to do PR, I talk about, the things that you need to successfully do PR. You need a press release.
Yes.
How do you write a press release? How do you get it in front of your local, people?
Audience,
and
yes.
Audience. You want to do an electronic press kit, which is right away automatically up levels you in a whole new way. People with electronic press kit, people are like, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. They know what they're doing here.
Yeah. It's funny when I launched my second book, I did a book signing. That was pretty cool.
It's so fun. And people are like, well, it's virtual. How do you do a book signing? And there are ways, because, and here's a very simple way, is you can bring people on. You can have a virtual event. You can do a little reading. Think of it as a little salon with your ideal clients and people who attend. You can get book plates, they're called, and they're self-adhesive. So you can autograph them, and they're flat. You just mail them in the mail, or you write them out to people, and so they purchase your book and you send them a book plate. And it's just a really nice way of connecting with your readers.
That's good stuff. I like it. Out of curiosity, would you recommend someone to just have a digital version of the book, like say a Kindle version, or do you think it carries more weight if you have both?
It's a good question. Typically in the past, before the coronavirus and pandemic, I would have said you want to have both.
Right.
And you would want to do your print book first. But what we're seeing is this trend, because, bookstores are closed, at least many places all over the world, and you can get things online, but it's taking longer to get a print version of your book, especially if you do print on demand, which I am a big fan of, as opposed to warehousing books, right? Letting them sit and molder in a warehouse. Yeah. So that there's more of a lead time. And there was a time in the beginning part of the pandemic where if you even ordered a book on Amazon, it could take a month to get to you. And then you needed to let it sit for 24 hours or 48 hours before you opened it, right?
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
So, and because we're not out of the woods, Kindle, or I'm going to say electronic versions, because we can get to places more than Kindle.
Yeah.
Electronic versions of your book can be checked out of the library. So if you publish through Ingram Spark or Draft to Digital, for example, and Kindle, KDP, you can get your books in libraries. You can have people checking your book out of the library. You can have people get them immediately to their electronic device, whether it's Apple Book or their ebook. And so at this point, we're doing kind of launching both at the same time, which I would normally not have done. But it gets the book accessible to people together.
Okay.
So
I was just curious about that because, I did both. And more people actually order my Kindle version than they do my print version. Only a few people have ordered my print version. As a matter of fact, the people who order my print version ordered it from my website. They have not ordered it from Amazon yet, but that's because I'm promoting it on my website.
Right, exactly. Well, and it's there. And so, and as you do your speaking, you talk about how you're a #1 best-selling author, and
that's right.
And so you're always, bringing that up because it's important. And yeah, so it's been interesting because the digital marketing space is ramping up. And I mentioned this draft to digital. It's draft with the number 2 to digital. They are a platform that's based in Canada.
Okay.
And I've been recently introduced to them, and they do amazing work. They get your book everywhere electronically. And they also now have the ability to get it into audiobook format.
And that was my next question. What's your take on the audiobook format now that everything is like, for instance, like, you know, a lot of my readers, because I look at my analytics, a lot of my readers, I'm okay. My listeners,
Right.
you know, they're on apps. They're on Stitcher. They're on Apple Podcasts. They're on Google Podcasts. So they're driving and listening. So what's your take on the whole audio? You know, we talk about digital format, physical format. What's, you know, should we also think about doing audio?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's funny because audio versions of books were the biggest market share up until the pandemic, when people weren't driving anymore.
Gotcha.
So, but that's starting to click up. I think last month we saw a 20% increase in audio. And so, yes, audio. I think it's probably the largest growing, because you think about it, you can download it to your device. And even if you're going for a walk, you can listen to something. You can do it while you're working out on the treadmill.
Go on the treadmill and do it.
Yeah, so you can multitask that way. And so as you found with your podcast listeners, people are doing more of that.
Yes.
And so audio is, although it took a hit during the pandemic, it's starting to click back up, and it is the single largest market share of books these days.
Outstanding.
But I will say that also we noticed as things sort of settled down and we moved through that initial panic stage, and we sort of integrated new habits into our lives. Actually, there has been print books are also now returning back to their normal pre-pandemic purchase levels.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So
Awesome.
it's been a very interesting time to be a publisher and to really look at the trends.
Right. Well, I'm having a great time, as I always do when I speak to you. I just have one last question for you, and then I'll let you go to your busy day. I know you've got a plethora of clients that you need to serve. But before I do that, do you want, I mean, I would love to drop, if it's okay with you, put your social media stuff on the show notes. I mean, I'm going to put your website on there because that's what we discussed, but is your social media, like your Debbie Kevin, all your connections on that?
Yeah, I'm everywhere, man. I am. So there's Deborah Kevin. There's
That's
Debbie
right, it's
Kevin.
Deborah.
Debbie,
it's Deborah.
Yeah, Deborah
Kevin.
Deborah Kevin on Facebook. Highlander Press Books is on Facebook.
Right.
I'm on Facebook with Deborah Kevin, writer editor. You can follow both of us.
See, I know you I know you so well that I can call you Debbie. See?
You do.
Because I got the N.
you definitely. The Frankie D special.
But yes, it is Deborah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. No, it's great. That's fine. Everyone listening are now my friends as well, so I love it. Yeah, so we actually, Highlander Press is actually open for submissions. So we actually have a submissions process, and you can go to Highlander Press, and I lay out right on the website how to submit your book, how to book a call with me just to chat. If you don't have anything written, you're not ready for someone to take a look at it, what we're looking for. We're doing specifically nonfiction, business related kind of books and memoir right now. I'm hopeful in the first quarter of 2021 to open that up to fiction as well. But yeah, so you can find me there. I'm all over social media, LinkedIn for sure. Connect with me.
Yep.
And yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah. No problem. I'll put all that stuff on the show notes so people can connect with you. And last question before I let you go. We talked a lot about books. We talked about writing process. It's a lengthy process. And, I happen to know that it's lengthy, but I didn't know all the intricacies until you shared it with us. So thanks for that. But, so you get all of this stuff done and you promote it and all of this stuff. What's the importance of reviews? Do reviews actually matter on a book?
I am so glad you brought this up because I meant to mention it when we were talking about Amazon.
Okay.
Reviews are everything. And so a really great habit is to have some beta readers as you're going, give them an advanced reader copy and ask them to put up as soon as your book is live, to put reviews out. So yes,
Okay.
reviews. So Amazon reviews actually drive people to your book. So if you get that, let's talk just for a moment about Amazon bestseller status, because you have it and you know the power of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's an algorithm. There's not a person, but there's an algorithm that if you get a lot of activity on your book in a 24-hour period, and people are putting eyes on it, and you're getting reviews, and people are buying it, and there's a lot of traction, what ends up happening is Amazon's algorithms go, hey, I need to pay attention to this book. And then they start putting it on lists. They can put it on their bestseller list. They can put it on their number one new release in this category list. Mm-hmm. And the longer it stays, the more it gets bundled. And so if you have a second book, let's say Frank Deming writes a second book, mm-hmm. what happens is then they're like, this person's a serious writer. We can now bundle them together. Have you ever logged in to purchase a book on Amazon? And they're like, if you like this book, you might like this one, or yes. People buy these books together.
Correct.
Amazon's doing that based upon algorithms. So it's really important, especially on Amazon, to get reviews. But there are other places that you can have reviews. Goodreads, BookBub. If you want to make the investment, you can even advertise your book in Publishers Weekly. And mm-hmm. then Publishers Weekly then do a review of your book. Now that mm-hmm. I would say is not so much for an expert level book as it is a thought leader book or a memoir. Mm-hmm. But there are ways, certainly. And so you want people to say what's really great about your book so that it helps other people who don't know you get your book. Because here's the thing, in order to become a bestseller outside of Amazon, you need 1,000 people to read and buy your book who don't know you. Right. Let's think about that for a moment. Like, it's great that Aunt Susie's buying it, or Uncle Joe, or mm-hmm. your best friend and your college roommate. That's awesome. Your kids, you're buying a box for yourself. But until 1,000 people see your book, mm-hmm. beyond people who know you. So Uncle Joe can tell his neighbor, hey, my nephew wrote this really great book. I know you're in business. Hey, it might be really helpful. When that person buys a book, that's a person who doesn't know you.
Yeah.
So it's really important. And with there's something like 2,400. No, I'm misspeaking. It's 4,500 books a day are being self-published.
Oh my God.
Think about that. 4,500. And you want to do everything that you can to get more eyeballs on your book. And so.
Wow. But you see the chaos that you're creating, Debbie? Jeez. 4,500?
I am not creating chaos. I'm actually creating clarity and cohesion.
Yes, I agree. I'm just being stupid.
You're being. We're having some fun, but it's true. So don't be discouraged. I think that's what I want people to hear: is don't be discouraged. I believe truly every person has a story to share.
Correct. I agree.
Every person, especially every entrepreneur. You're doing the hard things every day, and you're making a difference in a way that takes a lot of courage. And isn't it our obligation mm-hmm. to shine the light on the path for other people who want to do the same thing?
Amen to that. That's right. That's right. Now that is an awesome ending to an incredible interview with the great Debbie Kevin. I am so happy that we had this time together, and I'm looking forward to the release of your book. Really looking forward to it, and looking forward to letting people know more about your services, because it's awesome services, and everyone needs to. If you've been on the fence about writing a book, get off the fence, start doing it, and if you're having trouble, reach out to Debbie because she'll help you.
Well, thank you, Frank, and I appreciate so much the time with you today. It's always a pleasure, and I really am grateful for the chance to talk about one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah, I mean, the passion comes out. I hope you guys heard the passion as she was talking about creating and the creativity. And I got to tell you, that passion is going to come out when you do select her as a person to get the book out there for you. So with that, I am going to bid farewell to my good friend, Debbie Kevin. This has been Marketing Solutions for Local Businesses. I am Frank Deming, the local business guy, and you've just been blessed by the great Debbie Kevin herself. Take care until next episode. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Businesses, the podcast where you will discover all the latest and greatest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. Don't forget, any links that were mentioned during the broadcast will be available to you in the show notes, so be sure to grab them while you have the chance. Incidentally, if you have any topics that you would like for us to discuss on the show, be sure to send an email to the email provided in the show notes, or click the Contact Us link and let us know what topic you would like us to help you with, and we'll be sure to add it to our schedule. If you would like for Frank and his team to look at your digital marketing presence and give you a free evaluation, simply click the Request a Free Consultation link in the show notes to get a hold of them. That being said, until our next episode, make it a successful digital marketing day. Peace out.